Now, today, this episode, we have a very interesting guest on the show, and he's quite interesting in many, many ways. And we're talking to TC Lin. How you doing, TC? What's up, man?
What's up?
What's up? Right? Yeah, you looking good with your kufi, man. You looking good. You looking good.
We got all the color coordination going on.
Color coordination.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I want to open up. We always like to ask, you know, where is home originally from? Well, I should say where you're originally from. That's what I should say first, right?
Originally from the States. But we did move around. I lived in like 9 houses growing up, so it's kind of hard to say which one was home. I usually say Florida. When people want a simple answer, I say Florida, Orlando, Florida.
Yeah, telling people sometimes where you're from is not always a simple thing. And, you know, now you're in Taiwan. What brought you to Taiwan?
I came here for college, to study Mandarin, went to Donghai University, and this was in the late 80s. So that was
Boy, you're old.
Back. I am. We both old, man.
You better speak for yourself. Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, I'm old. You are the picture of youth.
Oh, thank you, boy. You're a terrible liar, man. But that's okay.
I am.
It's okay. You know, this is okay. Today's my birthday too, so I guess that's your
Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. So you got here way back in the 80s and stuff like that, and you studied at, let's see, if I remember, was that Goya Rubao, right? The Mandarin Training Center, something like that? I don't know.
No, I studied at Donghai University.
Oh, but I was thinking about like earlier, like way back. And you got so Donghai, and was it only Mandarin, or do you study? What else do you study along with Mandarin? Was it any history involved, anything like that?
Well, the thing is, I kind of went rogue from the language learning center because I didn't feel like being in class with other foreigners all day. And this was 1989, right? So just after Tiananmen, we got this influx of a bunch of students from America who were dead set on studying Mandarin in Beijing. And they were so pissed that they were not able to go to Beijing to study Mandarin because, you know, all the programs have been shut down, and they rerouted them to Taiwan. And they just bitched and moaned the whole time. And I was just like, oh, screw this. I just want to get away from these people. So I started enrolling in actual like regular college courses at Donghai. So I took all sorts of things, but I mainly focused on mass communications. And I joined the orchestra and took music classes and other classes as well. And I took tests in Chinese with the other students, and my grades were, of course, horrible because it's not native language. But you know, right. I passed, so there was that. You know,
come on! You must have that extra help, you know, because they probably felt sorry for you and they gave you like a little, you know, oh, you know,
he tried.
He tried. He gets points. That's what tried. Yeah,
because you know I'm a lefty, so you know my handwriting is horrible.
You didn't get punished. You didn't get punished for being a lefty, did you?
Not at that point. I got punished later for being lefty. I got punished in the army when I was for being lefty.
Okay, now hold on. Now, before we get into that, now, you know, that's going to be quite shocking to explain. How did this guy from Florida get into the Taiwan Army? Because I failed to mention, and I wanted to save until a little better time, that you are now an R.O.C. citizen. Now, how did that trip up, man? How did that happen?
It's kind of fun that you say I am now an R.O.C. citizen. I've actually been an R.O.C. citizen at this point longer than I was an American citizen. But it's funny, in Chinese they say 已经. 你已经是国民了. But yeah, so it's how did that happen? That's a long story. I wrote a book about it, if you'd like.
That's right.
I wrote a couple of books about it. One in Chinese and one in English. But basically, as you know, back in the day, there was no such thing as permanent residency in Taiwan. And basically, if you wanted to stick around here and you were a citizen, you had to jump through a bunch of hoops. And you had to do what they said, and you have to do a certain job that your visa was for, and that was your life. And so at that point, when I made the decision to immigrate to Taiwan, I did what was necessary to do that. I felt that if I'm going to make my life here, then I want it to be a full life. I want to have the freedom and the latitude to have the kind of life that I want to live, you know. And at that point, I wasn't teaching English. I never really taught English here, but I wanted to do something outside that sphere. If that makes
Well,
sense.
that to decide to become a citizen. I mean, being at that age, you know, at that time when you're younger, and you know, there's a lot of things going on in your mind at that time. I mean, there's a lot of load you have to carry in your mind to say, okay, I'm going to become an R.O.C citizen. I'm going to live here. I mean, what there's had to be something else in you that said, okay, I'm going to do this, because you have to think about, you know, whether you're going to leave back home. Did you take much, and did you have much of that to carry on your shoulder? That's what I should say.
Well, yeah, being young has its advantages in that you know, you're not that cautious. You know, you can make those leaps of faith that you probably wouldn't do when you're older and you know more about what's going on. But people ask me, why did I do it? And the fact is that I never really felt much of a connection to the States from growing up when I was little. I mean, might have had something to do with growing up in so many different places and never really forming an attachment, an attraction or an attachment to any one place. It might have had to do with my brother and sister being very much older than me and them leaving much earlier. So it was basically just me and my parents, and both my parents worked. But, or maybe cultural reasons, you know, for whatever reason, there was just something not right about something. I don't want to say not right, but in addition to not rights, there was a lack of attachment, a lack of a feeling of giving much up when I gave up my American citizenship.
So do you felt that Taiwan actually, by you being here, or something, some element, that element that gave you an attachment that actually filled in this missing void? What was that thing, the element that kind of like filled in the gap that maybe you didn't know at that time you were deprived of or wasn't aware of?
One thing I found curious about that, and I've wondered about this question a lot. I've always had this feeling of not quite belonging, not quite being in step with American society in general. And granted, at that young age, I probably didn't know a lot about society in America. So it was probably I didn't explore at the time that I probably should have. But anyway, it is what it is. But one of the things that appealed to me then, and still appeals to me, in fact, is I feel more in sync with people who don't really belong, they're not quite in sync with the world, which is like Taiwan. You know, the history of Taiwan is sort of been bounced back and forth from culture to culture, from ruler to ruler, throughout the centuries. And there's this sort of dogged persistence of non-identity here that I identify with, if that makes sense. I identify with the lack of identity, and sort of I feel like I'm in a place where I kind of fit in here, even though I don't quite, but I kind of fit in not fitting in. If that makes any sense.
Fit in by not fitting in is something I can also say that I feel sometimes, you know, especially, you know, when you are able to communicate in the local language and talk to people, not only because of the language, but actually share cross-cultural experiences with the locals here in ways that kind of like make it palatable for them. And that's kind of interesting. And you did military service here, you know, and that is something else too. How was your trip through that? Being the only barbarian in the group.
Well, I mean, as you know, up until fairly recently, military service was mandatory. And when I did it, and this was in the mid 90s, it was 2 years of service, or 3 years if you were in the Air Force, I think. But for me, I was in the Army, so it was 2 years. But I mean, it's mandatory. It's mandatory. It's something that all male citizens should have to do. Now, as you know very well, and I know very well, that like not everyone has to do it, because if you have enough guanxi or connections, you can probably get out of it. But I didn't have any of that. I mean, recently they've had this thing where like the super foreigners get citizenship and they don't have to give up their original citizenship, sort of thing.
Yeah, that'll be a whole different podcast.
Right. I mean, that's a very Taiwanese solution to the problem at hand. It's sort of like, yeah, we'll say that we're doing it, but only you, and maybe you can do it if we like you.
What was the response then from your comrades at that time, your fellow soldiers and stuff? How did they react to having this, look at you, hey, Aldoa, how did you feel their responses were when they finally find out they get this Aldoa, this Lin guy, but when they see you, it's like, wait a minute, somebody here lied to us.
No, nobody lied. It's all good. Well, I mean, in basic training, everyone is obviously very busy and very concerned with just getting by, because basic training was just this whirlwind of everything going on, just throwing everything at you, just constantly. So nobody had time to figure out, this person looks slightly different from us, or any of that. And the officers in charge didn't really treat me any differently, because I think they knew that if they did, they would have gotten in trouble for it.
But wouldn't that be a reason to even work on you even harder, because they want to prove that they're not treating you any differently?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them. It certainly felt like it, but I mean, I'm not them, so I can't tell. As far as I could tell, they were treating me pretty much just like everyone else. And then when I was assigned to a unit after basic training, and this was in the mountains of Miaoli. People were like, huh? And just sort of like, okay. I mean, there was one or two officers that kind of freaked out when they saw me in formation. Okay, there's one guy that freaked out when he saw me in formation. And he was like, what the hell's going on? But everyone else they got used to me real quick. I mean, because you can't constantly be surprised at this one dude. I mean, basically, once they knew it was me and I was doing what I was supposed to do, then it was just like, okay, well, that's what that is,
Right. So you get the equal opportunity trash treatment, which is another word for being fair. But
I mean, there was this one guy, this officer that saw me in formation one time, and he did a double take, a spit take, and then people saw him do it, and he tried to cover it up by finding something wrong with me. He was trying to find something out that I was some sort of infraction that I was committing, and he's finally settled. And he's like, who told this soldier he could wear a watch?
A blue watch.
He can't wear a watch. And it just went throughout the entire unit. I mean, and he called up my captain, and the captain of my company, and he was like, who told him he could wear a watch? And he was like, sir, I think everyone can wear watches. It's like, shut up, just like, and it got him in trouble, my captain. And so later on, like a week later, my captain was just sort of like saying, how's it going? In this very uncaptainly mood he was in at one point. And I was just like, well, yeah, things are going good. That watch thing was weird though, huh? And that just set him off. He was like, are you implying that wearing a watch is okay? That was good that day? And I'm like, no. And he started calling all the other officers in. He's like questioning them. Is it legal to wear a watch? Is there a rule against wearing a watch? Nobody knew. The entire company was crowded in that one room, and nobody knew if you could wear a watch. To this day, I've never heard someone say you can't wear a watch in the Army. All this for someone's just embarrassed spit take, But otherwise things were pretty normal. It was just like, normal soldier life.
whatever, most people wouldn't even understand what you mean, because normal soldier life in different nations is just,
Yeah.
it's just different. How did people back in Florida, or people you knew back in the States, what kind of responses you got from them, knowing that, I'm not American anymore, I'm now Taiwanese? What did you maintain communications with them, or how were their responses to you? Because that'll be
Well,
interesting for me to hear.
we sort of fell out of touch for a long time, but then Facebook came around, and Facebook, you start looking up all your old friends, from way back in the day, and a lot of them were like, yeah, that sounds like you. That sounds like something that you would do. But other times it was kind of interesting, because like some of my more conservative friends, when I would be talking about, because I tend to be a little bit more liberal, and my conservatives were like, so if you hate America so much, why don't you just renounce your citizenship? I'm like, 1994, baby.
Oh,
That's when I did that.
huh. And they were basing their premise on any particular event or any particular cult of personality or anything like that?
That's a leading question. I think that could be summed up in Donald J. Trump, basically. If you're talking about toxic personalities.
Yeah, because
not to get political, but
not to get political, because we know this is about coming to Taiwan. But the thing is, it's hard to ignore, because in some ways this is all connected to us, especially if we come from the United States or even North America in some cases, because there's some things that we really have to consider. And having friends and family back in, I'll say, North America at this point, it does bring to question a lot of things, especially things concerning how we see events going on back home, regardless if it's 45 and some of the moves he's made with not only within the United States, but also concerning our neighbors across the street over there. Not to say straight.
Yeah.
But it's just like being in a gang war. But and we are the pawns, whether we are Taiwanese or Americans or not, because that's what we're involved in. But the thing is, recently, let's talk about recently then. What kind of remarks are you getting from people back home concerning what's happening, especially what's happening first in the United States? So do you get any comments from them? Or what are your comments based on what you see going on in the United States?
My comments or their comments?
Your comments first.
It seems at once insane and totally predictable. It's like I never thought it would get this bad, but then I kind of all along kind of thought, this could happen, because this Trump and the current political climate. I'm not a political analyst by any means, but it just seems like the wheels were set in motion for the situation as far back as the 80s, 70s, and 80s, with the election of Nixon, and then Reagan. And Reagan's war on drugs. And of course, I mean, I don't want to go through the whole history of it, but it seems like this is sort of an inevitable conclusion to a process that's been in the works for a long time. And this sort of current tribal level politicization of opinion seems like it's been implemented by the parties concerned. This has been done to the American people. They've been sort of manipulated into basically being at each other's throats. But the thing is, I don't believe that you can say that both sides are at fault. I don't think that's a useful opinion. I just think that this is a very old conflict.
So you're not surprised. I mean, personally, I'm not surprised, because things kind of like, I will say, in my part of the world where I'm from, and even from my position where I'm at now over here in Taiwan too, it's something that in the back of my mind, I already know. But when it came out further in the more forefront, which I have to, in many cases, thank 45 for for doing it in some strange way, to put it more in public and forcing people to talk about it. I'm not surprised, but to some other people who were kind of like insulated from these events, it was a surprise to them, but not to me. Now, the thing is, and this is a question I would ask you at this time, do you think people back home are aware how once people outside of the nation, United States, saw the United States, and now how they see us, and in a way now today it's like they almost pity us, pity to see the things going on. Do you have any reflections on things like that?
I think the entire world is just looking at the states and just, what is going on? Pitying, yeah, certainly. But I think that one of the reasons for this crisis is the American sense of exceptionalism, that it can never happen here, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly the case with COVID-19. You could see you know how things went down when China started getting cases, and WHO was just like, it's okay, it's all good, don't worry about it. And Taiwan is like, oh no, we know China. We're going to start taking some precautions. And then we tried to tell the WHO about it, and they wouldn't listen. But during that time, like in the early part of this year, you could see what was going on in the media in the States. And it was very concerning because people had this opinion like, well, that's a third world problem. That's not going to happen. That can't happen to us. It won't happen to us. And we're just going to ignore it because that can't happen. And of course, now you see the way things are. And it's that sense of we don't, like America is saying that we don't have this problem. We can't have this problem. Therefore, we're not going to take precautions against this problem. And that transfers not just from COVID, that transfers into many areas, I think. And that includes like creeping authoritarianism. And you could say many factors in society these days. I think people think, well, since it can't happen here, it won't happen here. Like basically you could say that about fascism. Fascism has always been a native movement, but people say, well, people have this picture in their mind of fascism as something that's brought in from abroad. Like that happened in Germany because Germany, and that's it. That's the entire argument. Or it happened in Italy because Italy. Well, that's Italians, but it's always, when it happens, it's always a native movement. It's a native movement. But people, that's one of the reasons why fascism happens, is because people think, well, it just can't happen here. And so they see all the signs, but they're like, well, that's not happening. So no problem.
Yeah. I always like to use the term called selective amnesia. We choose to remember what we want to remember and forget what we want to forget. But I'm seeing a term that is used by certain social scientists called radical equality happening in the States now, that I see just pulling people down. Even though we have separations of ideas and beliefs, there are always a part that overlap. And I do see the radical ends of all sides becoming narrower and narrower. And of course, these loud voices, these smaller radical voices on all sides are apparently sound the loudest. And those who are caught in the middle, they are afraid to open their mouths because they feel they're going to be attacked from all sides. And this is my observation. And this bothers me a lot because I know I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but I'm caught in a situation where I live here in Taiwan, and we got these neighbors next door flying over into airspace over here, may drop something on us, or got these missiles pointing at us. And I do hope that Taiwan stays safe. But on the other end, when I look at my folks and family back home in the United States, I worry about them. And I know that they have to make a political decision this year. And that maybe doesn't concern you. But have you heard anything from people back home saying that maybe changing their mind on what you did to become a citizen here? Maybe they're like asking questions about, can I come over there and visit you sometimes? I mean, anything like that?
Yeah, once you have to stay in quarantine. But I have had people say in the past, over the past year or so, half a year or so, people that know my background and know what I did, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I get what you did. I know why you did what you did." I said, "Now I get it. I see it now." But I think that it's funny you mentioned the missiles thing, because we had that missile crisis in 1996, and I was in the
Right.
Army in 1996, and they had the missiles coming over and splashing down off our coast. And the officers were telling us that we might actually have to go do this stuff that we were training to do for real at that point. And at that point, I didn't know if it was, real enough, what was going to happen. Nobody knew it was going to happen. So it's kind of interesting to see this present buildup that we're seeing from China, and how people see Trump as a strong friend of Taiwan. But I agree with you when you say that basically he sees Taiwan as a pawn that he can use or not as he likes. And I think you can say the same about any administration in the United States.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I forgot what was the question you asked. I think I went off on a tangent there.
No, actually, because I'm talking about how I see it from my end, because I'm still a U.S. citizen.
Mm-hmm.
I know how 45 is viewed back home, at least from the groups and the concerns that I am worried about. But because I'm here in Taiwan, I want to see Taiwan protected.
Mm-hmm.
But you have families still back, or people who are related to you by blood back in the United States.
Yeah.
Florida or thereof. I mean,
yeah, they're in Oklahoma.
We know but we know what's going on, and we're kind of like caught in the middle. I mean, when you got United States Air Force fueling planes, fueling Taiwan F-16s in the air, that is called cooperation, regardless. And I just hope that something can be resolved before that. And I'm just was interested to see a person in your position, how would you see that, or how people in the States would question you on certain things concerning anything like that, because it kind of makes me nervous. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, it makes us nervous, but I mean, we've been nervous. Taiwan as a nation has been nervous about this stuff for as long as anyone can remember. You can only be nervous about something for so often. You have to go about your daily life and take care of your business, basically. As far as family and friends in the States, most of my family and friends are probably not going to vote for Trump, to say the least. And if any of them do, then they're beyond my help. I can't.
Beyond your help.
Yeah, what can I say? I can't say anything that would sway their opinion, because the people that support Trump tend to, in my experience, tend to be the kind of people who are not easily dissuaded by logic, let's say.
Well, comments from both you and I are going to bring in some trolling factors, because we're supposed to be talking about what brought us here to Taiwan and stuff like that.
I suppose, but I mean that's an interesting. Your podcast is basically focused on the expatriate community in Taiwan, right?
Yeah,
and I find it interesting the political swayings that I often encounter among Westerners who live in Taiwan. And to be honest, mine is not a very nuanced opinion, because I don't really hang out with a lot of Westerners, to be honest. Beyond my band, that's about it. My band and friends of the band. Otherwise, I spend all my time with Taiwanese people. So I'm not really versed on. I haven't done any research, but from what I see, like on message boards, it seems to sway largely conservative.
Oh, so even because this is going to bring some comments, but even from the community here in Taiwan, the expat community, specifically from North America and Europe, maybe you're getting the type of feeling that it's ultra right in total, or what particular element that you see the most on these message boards that kind of like rings out to you the most?
I don't want to say 100%. I'm not saying it's ultra right, but what
Mhm.
I'm saying is that I'm surprised at the amount, which is not, it's not everybody, obviously. That would be kind of freaky. But
Mhm.
the amount of Westerners who come here and sort of have this semi-colonial mindset,
Oh, now I got you.
sort of like they have certain expectations about how the way Taiwanese people should behave, and then certain how they should be treated as Westerners. And it's just say there's a little bit of a sense of entitlement in there that you would not normally see in people who I would think would be interested in traveling the world and examining other cultures. So
Most
it's kind of a strange conundrum there among this. It's admittedly it's not everybody, but it's enough that I'm just like, that's interesting that there are
most
these people around.
most Westerners who choose to, well, I don't mean travel, who choose to live an extended amount of time overseas are usually those who are able to allow themselves to adapt to a place that they don't have roots in, or
Hmm.
allow themselves to become adapted to a culture they're previously was not familiar with. And
You would think
I
so. You would think so. But I think there's this sort of tradition of the bubble in
mm,
places like Taiwan. I mean, Taiwan used to be known as a hardship post. And
right.
so you would have this, as you know, this sort of bubble of foreigners in places like Tianmu,
Right.
where they would live an American life and only occasionally venture out into the real world. I was talking with this one old white guy one time. He had been here for a long time,
What's a
and
long time, by the way?
he had been here for like 20 years. And this was like 15 years ago. So like a while ago, I was like, this is back when I was a TV cameraman. And I said, I lived in Xindian. He said, oh, it's very Chinese down there, isn't it? I'm like, what?
Yeah. What is he?
What are you talking about? And
Right.
this I meet these guys and they don't speak Chinese, which is okay. I can understand they may not have time or there are other difficulties, but they seem to take a little bit of pride in that. I was like, well, no, of course I don't speak Chinese. What are you talking about? Why would I want to speak Chinese? Sort of thing. Uh, and again, this is just a few people. I'm not trying to paint everyone with the same brush.
Right.
You know,
Right. That's true.
I'm just surprised in this day and age that that I keep running into them. That's all.
Yeah.
But I think that what you're talking about the whole sort of fitting in, I think we all have our own balances that we have to find in between the two cultures. And you have your balance and I have my balance. My balance is my personally, I mean, I still enjoy like a good English novel. I watch Netflix sometimes. And it's, in English and
Right.
Chinese. I mean, I have my own balance that I find that is good for me. And for them, maybe their balance is something that they need to spend all the time, most of the time in that environment. I'm not going to
Well,
fault them for that. That's it's just these expectations that other people should be a certain way.
and where the
It's-
expectations were set and based on what? This is something that is
right.
we
Yeah.
cannot define it because it's
Right.
that type of thing is personal.
It's subjective.
It's
Yeah.
very. Do you think then there? I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to stay optimistic. But do you think there are any steps that can be made to kind of like take these so-called, this is why I feel Taiwan should be like, are there any bits that can be, or any elements that we can use to kind of like open up the minds of people like that? Or it's just that it's impossible?
I think that we just have to live our best lives as best we can. And I wouldn't say I don't think that we should spend that much time on them, to be honest. I mean, you're doing really good work with what you're doing here with Taiwan Blend and Four Seas One Family. And I think you're an example to other people, be they Taiwanese or expatriates or whomever. I think just do what you do best, live your best life, and let that be your statement. I mean, I don't think
Right.
there's any point in going and specifically trying to change people's minds about certain things. I mean, they're just gonna do them. All you can
Yeah,
do is do you.
yeah. The co-host Sean, he works a lot with the indigenous population. He's right now involved with something really involved to introduce more
Well,
people in
they
Taiwan
need
to.
they need it. I mean, the Aborigine, the indigenous population here has gone through some stuff
Yeah.
for a long time. I mean, if you look at the Japanese basically tried to genocide them, you know, and a friend of mine, Banai, who is an indigenous singer, she started up a protest in front of the presidential office, and this was like years and years ago. After President Tsai, she apologized to the indigenous population, and then she made some promises that she didn't quite keep up with, and so Banai and Nabu have sort of been camped out, and they've moved from Kaidao in front of the presidential office. They were forced out of that little village that they had created there over to Taipei New Park, 228 Park, and they're still there to this day.
Wow.
Still waiting for an answer from the presidential office, which is, and I voted for Tsai, but I'm disappointed in the way that the indigenous people have been treated. And I'm not saying that another administration would have done better, but I have to admit that I'm slightly disappointed in the way that this administration has been proceeding in that respect.
Change, especially change that really affect a lot of people in a positive way, or anytime you get somebody or a group of people being affected in a positive way, there's always some kinds of negative. And when you're a politician, you have to bounce that around. Yeah. And your advisors would tell you to do some things, even things that you rather not do. And I can only wish the best for Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Fu Zongtong. I really wish the best for them.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
And this is, I guess, why this is some of the reasons why people like you and I have chosen to live out here, and a lot of us would protect Taiwan in any way we can.
Yeah,
and that's a question that we can talk about later one day. So yeah. I'm going to change the page back on the positive end, because I really don't like to close the door to any discussion on such a negative,
sorry about
connotation.
That. My bad.
I don't need that kind of birthday gift. But what has, since you've been here in Taiwan, what has changed your mind or changed you in a way, especially with concerning Taiwan, that helped give you a more reason to live your life here? What particular thing actually tripped you, that made that trip for you to make you fall in love, some people say, with Taiwan, or to build a connection? Because this thing, I like the Chinese word called 缘分, right? And how would you say that in English? It's like
destiny, fate, something like that.
Yeah, destiny, fate. There's something that's hard to explain sometimes when a person finds a connection.
To be.
Yeah. What actually, or is there an event or a thing, or what actually tripped that in you?
It's hard to say, because things can change over the years. Basically, when I was in college, here, I didn't want to go back to the States, as there was just nothing for me there. And then when I did go back to get my diploma, all I could think of was coming back here. And a lot of people say, well, that's because you look white and people treat white people nice in Taiwan. But I actually don't. I'm actually not a fan of the way people treat white people in Taiwan. What I aspire to was more, I see the way Taiwanese treat each other within that society. And I think that's something that I want to be part of. And so that's the kind of thing that I kind of aspire to, and I think I've attained in some degree. Obviously, you can't attain it 100%, but basically, just the way society works here is something that I want to be part of, and that I am a part of. in a
For
way that
real.
I never felt that desire to in the United States. And of course, yes, again, I was young and I might not have known much about the States. It's a big country, a lot of different cultures. And if I had stayed, I probably would have explored and I might have found it. I might have found my tribe there. I might have, I don't know, but I found my tribe here. So, it's all good. But as far as just the fact that I didn't feel the affinity for the States that I do here. And I've never stopped feeling that affinity over these, 30 odd years that I've been here. And so that, to me, that says something. I mean, to this day, I think I've been very fortunate and I've gotten a lot of opportunities here. But thinking about, well, what if I'd stayed in the States or what if I'd gone to another country or what I mean, that's just, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because you'll never know. You'll never know what was going to happen or what would have happened. But I'm happy.
On.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy with all the opportunities and the friends I've made here and the relationships that I've made here. And I've had it good so far. So knock on wood. But yeah, I'm good basically.
I wish I had more time to talk more about your, photography. I mean, you've had exhibitions and music and your involvement in the music that you make. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
The music that you guys make?
I got no place to go. I got no place to be. Yeah. I'm in a band called the Muddy Basin Ramblers. We started out in 2003, 2004. And we've put out, 4 albums so far? 2 of them were nominated for Grammys.
Yes.
One of them was 2 of them were nominated for Golden Melodies, and one of them won. And yeah, I mean, we've basically just been playing a long time, and it's great fun. And I've made a lot of friends through that. That's like my window on the expat community these days is through the Muddy Basin Ramblers, because like a lot of expatriates, a lot of Westerners and foreigners show up to the shows. I'm pretty shy at the shows. I'm a background man. I'm not a front man.
You don't smile a lot when you perform. You don't smile a lot. Your head is
that's why I
always
wear those
down.
glasses. That's why I wear the glasses, because people are like, TC, you're looking mean. You better put those glasses on. You're gonna piss someone off. There's gonna be a fight.
No,
so I wear the glasses.
You look mean. I mean, you're like, before we check out here, question here is, how do you envision yourself here in Taiwan from now into the future? And how would you like to envision Taiwan from now into the future?
Oh, that's the question, man.
That's what I'm here
I don't
for.
know. I'm keeping up with my photography. That's what I'm doing mostly this time. I teach a photography course at the Zhongzhen Community College. I've been teaching there for about 5 or 6 years now, and it's encouraging to see the students develop their vision of Taiwan. It's all the students are Taiwanese. The class is taught in Chinese, and I hope that in the realm of the arts and the photographic arts, especially, that more people can appreciate the sort of haphazard beauty of this place. I mean, it's not just mountains and beaches and Formosan bears and deer and like that. I mean, it was the actual beauty of the Taiwanese culture that we see around us every day. I mean, I think I'd like to see more of that celebrated in the arts and photography and film, which we've seen a lot in recent years. A lot of development, ever since Wei Desun's Haijiao Jihao, and the Zhongbo Sai movies. Yeah, movies like that, I think, are really, and it's really encouraging to see an opening of the arts and sort of an appreciation for being Taiwanese, whatever that entails. I mean, and sort of the opening up of what that means to be Taiwanese. And people say people say, "What are you exactly?" And it's like, I'm sort of Taiwanese. I'm a kind of Taiwanese. I don't know if I can say I'm a new Taiwanese because people say new Taiwanese is like the past. It's like the past 10 years or 20 years or something like that, and I go back before that, But whatever it is, just sort of like this opening up of the identity here into something that's truly remarkable, especially when you look at what's going on in the rest of the world.
Wow. TC, a heavy dude. Taiwan has been in a special space. I mean, yes, the U.S. had military here. It's a lot different from what's going on currently, unfortunately, fortunately, in Hong Kong, because when
Hong Kong is amazing, man. Hong Kong is just like, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, that's another show, obviously, but I'm just China's doing all this stuff to Hong Kong, and they think no one's looking. I mean, they think no one's looking at what they're doing. There's like no one's going to notice. I mean, they don't think that Taiwan's going to look at what's going on in Hong Kong and say, that looks like a good deal for us. I think we should do that. No one's saying that.
Yeah, because now, because of the information world, people can see what both hands are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
TC, I'm going to bounce out of here, and
Okay.
you and I, we can be talking for another hour, but I don't want to get too caught up in this because it'll cause me to jump in front of the mic. But look, TC, we'll get you back on in the future, and I'd like to thank you very much for sharing your particular interesting story here on Taiwan Blend. And,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, see you when when I get you back on again. And thank you once again for being here with us here at Taiwan Blend. And we'll be back, guys, with Sean, who will be back. Right now, he's doing something great, and we'll talk more about what he is doing at the moment. TC, take care, man.
Peace.
Peace.